This week I learned always have a backup video in place and ready to go. Hey, what's up, bookworms? Mike back with another weekly update as we are headed towards the end of June here. Another month that's just zipping on by. I feel like that for you guys because it definitely feels like that for me. So a little bit of unpredictability this week, because some things don't always go as planned. You know, you make your best laid plans, but they don't always work out that way. But you know what? We find a way to overcome that and come up with other things. At least that's how it did work out this week. But let's go ahead and talk about what am I reading, guys. I did finish Come With Me by Mr. Ronald Malfi. Now, again, I'll kind of just bring it back to what I said last week in case you guys missed it. This is an author that had been recommended to me for a long time. In my Stephen King videos, the comment always came up of, I think you'd like Ronald Malfi. He feels like a throwback to some earlier King, the way that he does some of his storytelling, the way he does some of his character work. I can see that. I can see that. He really tackles, you know, being a widow and just kind of coping with that grief and maybe finding out some things about your partner that maybe were best left unfound. You know, I think that's something that King has kind of worked with several times, and Malfi does it to a really, really good job here. And the thing is about halfway through, I said, I think I've got the mystery figured out, but I don't know if maybe it's Malfi using misdirection or not. Now, here's the thing. I kept expecting like crazy twist. I felt like it was pretty straightforward. I felt like I figured out the mystery right when the main character figured out the mystery. I kept waiting for like that weird twist, and it never actually happened. So what I had actually guessed was wrong. I can talk about that somewhere else, not in this, because I don't want to spoil that for you, if that's kind of the idea that you have run into. But I think I was just expecting a little bit more of a twist. Now, that didn't make it bad, but I will say, with this, guys, is this is another one of those, and this is the problem I have with a lot of modern horror, is they will recommend it to me, oh, it's a great horror book, and then you read it, it's like, dude, that's not a horror book. This is very much a cold case book. It has like some weird things that are kind of explained at the end, but this is not a horror novel. This is very much a cold case, thriller, detective kind of story. It really does feel like that, and that's not bad. That's not bad. I just hate when I get sold stuff like this as, oh, this is a big horror novel, and then you read it, it's like, this is like any cop book that I've ever read in my life. You know, that's kind of how it felt to me. And our main character isn't a cop, but, you know, I'm talking about you're trying to run down a crime, maybe solve something that the cops weren't able to solve. That's kind of how it felt to me. Now, that doesn't make it a bad book at all. I'm just saying, don't go into this expecting a horror novel and you can't really be disappointed. But yes, I think that King fans will like it. I don't think it's like Stephen King. That's always kind of something that will get a little twisted, but I think Stephen King fans will find plenty to appreciate here, and you can definitely tell that he's a fan, of course. But I did really enjoy the story. I like where he went with it, and I think he could have pushed the envelope a little bit more, and maybe he does in some of his other books. But here's the thing. I like this enough that I want to read more by him. I do have Blackmouth on my Kindle, so I'll probably be reading Blackmouth next, and a lot of people make the comparison to it with that one, so maybe that'll be a little bit more of the horror that I am looking for, because this is why I keep kind of straying away from a lot of the modern horror recommendations that I get, because I read them and I'm like, there's nothing horrific about this at all. It's just a thriller. But that isn't to say it's a bad book. It's just not what I would call horror. But again, if you're into the cold case kind of thing, or tracking down, or looking for serial killers, things like that, I think you'll love this. Some of my friends that are real big crime novel fans, I think they'll like this quite a bit. So very enjoyable, and I will read more from him without a doubt. Only thing I have left to read this month, guys, is Wool. This is book 1 in the Silo series by Hugh Howey. Now, the thing was, like I had started reading this a couple years back, and only got about, I don't know, 60 pages in. And decided it was like kind of it was probably a little bit more than 60 pages. I feel like where I'm at now is about where I stopped last time. About a quarter into it. It's a lot bigger book than people think it is. And the thing is, I feel like these get kind of labeled as YA, and I don't see it that way. But again, that's always an argument, and I'm going to completely go off the rails by starting to talk about that. But it was one of those, when I was reading it that first time, I said, I feel like it's just not the right timing for me. So I put it down. I said I'd go back to it eventually. Since then, we've had the Apple TV series, which I really did like. And I said, I want to revisit that again and actually finish it this time. So I'm enjoying it as where we are. It's a very slow start. So I try to tell people, is like, this has a slow start, and your main character isn't even really introduced till almost 100 pages in. So yeah, the show, I feel like they do the pacing of the beginning a little better. But I think if you've watched the show first, going and reading this after, I think that will make it actually a little bit better for you, because you're just hanging out with the deputy and the mayor for the first like 100 pages of this book, and then you realize neither one of those are the characters that you're going to follow over the course of the series. So about 100 pages before you meet Juliet in here, but Juliet has a great introduction, and she's a really great character, and I'm excited to see where this goes, because there's so many things about the show that I liked. I'm like, I wonder if the book does that the same way or not. So people ask me, do you think it's a good adaptation? I'm like, look, what I remember of the book, I felt like the adaptation was very good. It was very good. So I'm going to be interested now to see when I go back and read this after watching the show, do I feel the same way? But I'm liking it quite a bit, and if you guys want to join me, I don't know when I'm going to be doing books 2 or 3. So with this, I said, something new I was doing this year is I would start book 1 in a series, and if I like it, I'll keep going. If I don't, hey, too bad, so sad, bye-bye. But with this, I know I'm going to like it. I know I'm going to like it enough to continue with it. So I'll get that on the schedule eventually. I don't know. I am doing that new thing now. I don't know if you guys know. I did put out a community post the other day just saying it's not really like a news or an update or anything. I just want to kind of say thank you. Viewers have been urging me to kind of be more mood reader-ish or being more open to doing different things, not being kind of like slavish devotion to a schedule. And I've been saying that, doing my TBRs, once a month has been completely nerve-wracking because it's just not something I do. I like to plan ahead, but maybe not planning ahead, 12 to 15 months in advance. That might help a little bit. So while I'm on kind of sabbatical from reading 800-900 page chonkers right now, I thought a good idea was to kind of just mix it up and do like, several different genres at a time. So the method I'm using right now is 1 sci-fi, 1 horror, 1 fantasy, 1 kind of miscellaneous. That could be a thriller or a crime story or something like that. Just something that you wouldn't kind of put into one of those 3 main categories, and 1 manga at a time. And I feel like that's really something I'm encouraged to do going forward, because I really feel like I do call this channel, for all things horror, sci-fi, and fantasy, and I feel like it's fantasy and then other things is what it had actually became over time. So I want to make sure that I'm getting back to that, and it makes it so much easier to avoid burnout when you do mix up your genres like that. Speaking of manga, I also am on volume 27 of One Piece, which is Knee Deep in Skypiea. Don't have a ton to add because I'm really not that far into it, but yeah, just one of those things where One Piece is like, once you feel like it can't get any more random, it gets more random. This is really, really strange. Up there in Sky Island stuff is really, really weird so far. But I mean, part of the quirkiness, the weirdness is it's one of the reasons I love One Piece. But I do think it's one of those situations where it's like, man, you guys just can't stay out of trouble, can you? I mean, everywhere you go, you just cannot stay out of trouble. But that's just Luffy. They're telling him all the time, hey, you can't go there, you can't go there. And he's like, let's go. That's just kind of, what makes you love them. That's just kind of the thing. So I'll continue on that this week, and that leads me, guys, into what am I going to read. I'll obviously continue One Piece and finish Wool. That's all I have for the rest of the month of June, and I will actually be ready to go into my July reading plans. Now, I don't want to ruin what my July reading plans are for you, because I would like it if you guys watch that TBR video. That would be really, really awesome. But the thing is like, I'll give you a hint here if I do start one of my July reads early. It starts with a Robert and it ends with a McCammon. So if you can figure it out from there, maybe you can do that. Let's talk about this week on the channel, because did have to call it audible more than once. I did my Into the Multiverse for the Dreamcatcher it's just Dreamcatcher, not the Dreamcatcher. I find myself doing that a lot. Dreamcatcher by Stephen King, book that is much maligned by Stephen King fans. I talk about the good and the bad ones in that book there, and it's one of those things where I said I felt like the first 35-40% of that book is just excellent King. Then it's just kind of, your mileage is going to vary a little bit on that second half. So it's one of those where I do see the warts, I do see things there. And it was in my nostalgia for a while, reading it now, taking a look back and being like, okay, I can remember why I don't really recall very much of the second half of this book, because it's not very memorable. And it's just one of those things where I feel like your mileage is going to vary on if you like those things or not. But it's something I say I can't recommend if you're a new Stephen King reader. I can't recommend you read it early. I feel like this is like one of the first 2 or 3 Stephen King books you read. You'll be like, what the hell did Mike recommend this book for? It's one of those where I feel like if you have been reading Stephen King for a while, you consider yourself a constant reader. You know his style. You know what to expect. And you can go into it and say, hey, it's probably not one of his better ones, but still, I've read much worse things probably this year, So it would be in the lower third of my Stephen King books, I think. But it's definitely not anywhere as bad as you've heard. At least that's what I think. Been looking at some of those connections and speculating about the connections to Tommyknockers was a lot of fun for me, even if those have not been confirmed nor denied by Cy King himself. I did put out a couple of just some short rapid reviews of Vanished Birds by Simon Jimenez, and also The Demon Awakens by R.A. Salvatore, which were from previous weekly updates, but I've explained why I'm doing that. So I hope that people that are looking for just, my thoughts on those books, they're able to find those a little easier now. We had planned to do our debut of Quilluminati on Wednesday night. That was going to be myself, Brian from BellTube, John from Talking Story, of course, Philip from The Best of Fantasy. The thing was, it's like about an hour before just something came up and someone couldn't make it, so we had to reschedule. So I was like, okay, well, what do I do? And that's why I released that Demon Awakens clip a little earlier than I planned, and then I just kind of had to kind of make up something along the way. So what I did was just a video I'd planned to do next week was going to be the good and the bad of Realm of the Eldlings, and I gave a hat tip to my amigo Loco from the Discord server. He did, one of my patrons, he actually suggested a good and the bad over Why You Should Read, and I thought it was a great idea. So all the credit to Loco there. That was a great idea, and that's why I would do that, because I feel like with Why You Should Read, I usually like to stick to things I've like. It has a high success rate. This is like 95% of you are probably gonna like this if you just give it a shot. With the good and the bad, I always say, hey, if you're undecided, you're not sure, and I do get asked that a lot. Do you think I would like Realm of the Eldlings? I'm like, oh man, that's the very definition of a your mileage may vary kind of series, because it's not fast paced. It doesn't have a ton of action, and the word count's quite long. So I talk about the things that I like to talk about, the things that might not work for you, and it may help you. Hopefully, helps you decide if you're kind of on a knife's edge which way you want to fall. If you really, really agree with the stuff I said in the good, hey, jump on it. If some things that I said in the bad had you been like, oh no, Mel, there are other series out there that I would recommend to you. But I do love the series, top 10 fantasy series for me. But I'm not blind to the warts that are in it, and I do talk about those things in that video. So that was kind of my makeup, and we'll just go ahead and switch the Quilluminati to next week. But the thing was, is like I had that Wednesday night wide open, and my wife and I had been talking about reviving post-credits over on Mike's Media Reviews for a while. And we wanted to really get back on it when House of the Dragon premiered. We said we really wanted to get together and talk about that. So we just did a couple of videos to get the channel just basically rolling again. We don't have like a real recording space or anything. We're actually working on that right now, working on getting an actual dedicated recording space just for Mike's Media Reviews and for post-credits, but we hadn't actually done that yet, so we just kind of recorded on the sofa. So, the lighting's weird, the angle's weird, all that stuff. We just want to kind of get it out there and get the channel rolling again. So it's very much a work in progress, but unlike this channel, it's one of those where I don't care. I'm just going to put out whatever we want to talk about in that, and that's why the first video is just like a we're back, just kind of what we've been up to the last 7 months of radio silence on Mike's Media Reviews, and then of course we did our discussion for Episode 1 of House of the Dragon Season 2, and it's a lot of fun because, I have read Fire and Blood, and my wife has not. She's read the Song of Ice and Fire books proper, but she's never read Fire and Blood. So she's really kind of blind going into the series. So it's been really fun for me to watch it with someone who's very knowledgeable of that world, but doesn't know the exact history of the Dance of Dragons. So I think that makes it a fun conversation to kind of do spoiler discussions of that every week after we finish, and me just to kind of smile and with a knowing kind of glance at her, like, ha, that's cute that you think that. So always a lot of fun for me. I've had a lot of people asking if we were going to be doing House of Dragons. I look over here, look on this channel, guys, like these videos just didn't garner enough attention for me to dedicate that an hour plus to doing that every single week. So it was one of those where I look, that's what the other channel's for. That's what the media channel's for, is to talk about things that aren't books, and I feel like that's a better home for it. So hopefully you guys will make your way over to Mike's Media Reviews. We'll be talking about every single episode of House of the Dragon, a day or two after it ends. Give everybody a chance to kind of see it before we can talk some spoilers. And we'll be doing other things. We're going to be talking about Fallout, we talk about Dark Matter, we talk about Shogun, we talk about everything. We probably won't be doing like weekly episodes for everything. Just House of Dragon is like an ultimate, water cooler kind of show. So we'll be doing it for that. Other ones we'll be talking about the seasons as a whole when we finish them. But, anything's on the table to talk about over there. What we're watching, what we're playing, what we're listening to, whatever. That's always going to be a lot of fun. So I'm glad to have Mike's Media Reviews up and rolling again. And those of you who stuck with me during that long, long silence, thank you. You are the best. As for some next week plans, I did mention my July TBR. I'll be announcing that next week, everything I plan to read in July. And like I said, I feel like that's a really good method of one manga, one sci-fi, one horror, one fantasy, and one miscellaneous. That's going to be the program kind of going forward. I'm trying to keep it under 500 to 600 pages for each book because I don't want another 900-page tome that's just going to kind of wreck me, like some other books this year have done. So we'll get into that. And of course, we have rescheduled Columinati to talk The Vanished Birds. That'll be on Wednesday night live. That's 7 p.m. Houston time. So I hope you guys can jump in the chat if you have read the book or if you just want to see us goof off because we all have kind of varying opinions on the book, and I DNF'd it. So it should be it should be quite fun to hear this discussion. So stick with us Wednesday night. Hopefully you'll hear some things that you weren't expecting to hear. TV and movie talk things before I go. Now I'm going to tell you guys that again, Mike's Media Reviews, we're going to be doing basically a weekly wrap up like this. Weekly update, how I do this every single week. We're going to be doing that on Mike's Media Reviews. My wife and I are going to be talking about the news, everything that's going on, TV, music, movies, gaming, all that stuff. We'll be doing that. So if you like this part of the weekly update, I hope you'll go over there and check that out because we will be tackling everything current. But as for this segment, we did our family movie night, and I feel like my oldest is getting right to the point where things that I found funny at his age, he's probably not going to find funny much longer, so I'm trying to get everything out, and we picked The Waterboy by Adam Sandler because he's really gotten into football lately, and that makes me very excited. American football. I love the NFL so much, and he's really gotten interested in it, and he really liked Happy Gilmore, so I'm like, let's see. Let's get him into these Adam Sandler movies before he decides that they're not that funny anymore. But Waterboy, what a ton of fun that was, right? And that's one of those where it's so 90s, but it's so fun. I had a blast rewatching it. We were all laughing like crazy. We've been talking about medulla oblongata all week, My youngest kid was just laughing, talking about tackling fuel and stuff. So, fun movie. It really has. I would say it's aged well because it's just kind of a goofy movie, but I still think it's very enjoyable. And that's one of those where I'm always curious, how does that stuff like that translate down to the next generation kind of thing. So the fact that my kids enjoyed it, that's great. So, and he's like, hey, all right, only 50 days away from actual football. And I'm like, yes, this is what I've been waiting for. So I've been waiting for. We continued our Stranger rewatch. My oldest son has kind of gotten obsessed with Stranger Things, and we are using that as an opportunity to rewatch it together. And we're about 4 episodes into Stranger Things Season 4, which I think is the best season after Season 1. And we got to that Running Up the Hill episode last night, and it's just so good. It's so great on a rewatch. So many things that you notice on a rewatch that you didn't the first time. It's so enjoyable. I really have enjoyed this. Like I said, the problems I had with seasons 2 and 3 of Stranger Things, I didn't have this go around. And it's getting back to that time where hopefully soon we're going to start seeing some teasers or something for season 5, which is supposed to be the final season of the show. And I'm very anxious, but my oldest is not. When he realizes that now he's got to wait with the rest of us once he does finish this. He can't just say, hey, start the next season, but we are rolling through that, and it has been very enjoyable, and I urge you all to revisit it, or if you haven't watched Stranger Things yet, please do. It's a great, great show, and a lot of people complain about it, and it's just like, go watch it again, because I complained about a lot of things in season 2 and 3, and I go back to it now, and I'm like, I don't have those complaints anymore. So, hey, to each their own. I think Stranger Things is phenomenal, almost all the way around. Amazing character writers. All those characters, I love or hate almost all of them. It's because they're so good at what they do. I'll leave with saying that, hey, they announced a sequel to Spaceballs. And Mel Brooks is going to be making it. Spaceballs was an amazing movie. I mean, growing up as a big Star Wars, Star Trek fan, I think that movie was just hilarious. It was just, Mel Brooks was can't miss for me in the 80s. But with Spaceballs, it was like, he jokes in the movie Spaceballs 2, The Search for More Money. So we always thought that was serious when we were kids, and we were always waiting for it. And then you realize, it was just, basically just calling out itself about how we're just packaging these things just to make sequels, make more money. But it was one of those where it was he always talked about, was it going to happen? Well, Mel's 97 years old now. And here's the thing, he's still sharp. He still has his wits about him, which is rare, but it's amazing. He really does. But I think it's too late for this. And a lot of people are saying Mel, he doesn't care. He doesn't care about cancel culture or whatever. He doesn't care about any of that stuff. He'll still make a comedy the way it's supposed to be made because he doesn't care who he upsets. That's just always been Mel Brooks. And now in your 90s, do you think you give a F about any of that? No, probably not. But here's the thing is I watched History of the World Part 2. I think it came out in Hulu last year. It just wasn't that funny. And part of me was has his humor passed you by? No, because I watched Young Frankenstein with my kids last year, and I was in tears laughing. So it's not that I feel like his humor passes by. Just I don't know. I don't know. It's just too late. Josh Gad's supposed to be in it. I'm assuming he's gonna take up the role of Barf since John Candy passed away. I don't know if he has anybody returning to this. Haven't heard anything about is Bill Pullman coming back? Is Daphne Zuniga coming back? I don't think Joan Rivers can come back. You know, so I don't know. I feel like this is one of those things like, so is it just taking place in the same universe? I don't think Rick Moranis acts anymore. So to me, it's starting to sound like it's Spaceballs 2 in name only. And look, if anybody can make it funny, it's Mel. I mean, he can. I wonder if he still has his fastball when it comes to comedy, you know? But we'll see. We'll see. I mean, it's cool. I'm glad the guy's still working and all. And I do love the original. It still makes me laugh to tears every time I watch it. But yeah, some of these things I'm like, it's starting to feel like these are just you know, some bucket list items for Mel, and maybe he's just getting them off his list, which I don't, you know, begrudge him for doing that. Good for you, man. If you have the stroke to get that done, get it done. But I guess more on that when it gets closer, because it was just announced and there was very, very little information about it except that Josh Gad was going to be in it. Who knows? We will see, guys. But that was my week. Again, hop on over to Mike's Media Reviews if you want to know some more of the entertainment industry, because we got plenty of things to say, and you guys can see the real star of the show, which is my wife. You know, that is the fuel that makes this whole thing go around. So drop in the comments, guys. Let me know what you're up to, what you're watching, what you're reading, what you're listening to, what you are playing, and I will talk to you there.